Well, a lot of Democratic donors are holding tight onto their wallets right now. That is not unusual, this sort of patient period between Iowa and New Hampshire and then waiting to see Nevada and how things sort out in South Carolina and obviously in 2 weeks on Super Tuesday. GOP fundraiser Dan Potter says that Bernie Sanders' small donors are much more important here than the billions that you're looking at potentially with a Michael Bloomberg. He spells it all very nicely in today's Wall Street Journal. What I liked about your piece, Dan, is it was about passion, I think. I'm making the leap here. And the small denominations and the support that's pretty rabid for him is something that Mike Bloomberg, with all his billions, has not been able to buy. So how does that sort out?
You know, as someone who's raised money for presidential campaigns and advised them, I just wanted to try to talk about the role of money in campaigns, because mostly it's covered as if the spend is the sole most important factor, but it's really not. I think the loyalty that comes when somebody writes a check for 20 bucks to a candidate is actually far more important. It's a measure of support. It's a measure of loyalty. It's almost a blood oath. Whereas somebody who spends their own money is really just an indicia of ardor for the office, their ambition. It doesn't really reflect on the voter. And elections are not about politicians. Politicians always make that mistake. It's not about them. It's about voters. So voter behavior evidenced by writing a check is far more significant than Bloomberg writing his own checks. We've seen this in California a lot. Self-funded candidates fail to connect. They might win a nomination, but it's never enough to actually win an election. And I think that's what we're watching here.
Well, Bloomberg did it in New York 3 times, right? And I know that's different in a local race versus a national race. But the one thing I do see is that early on you could tell where a candidate is going by how much money he or she is raising among smaller donors and denominations. That was a very early sign of then Senator Barack Obama's appeal that so many were giving to him online at the time, which was a little unusual then, and in small amounts, and later, of course, with Bernie Sanders. It is a reflection of appeal, isn't it?
Yeah, very definitely. But if you're relying on large donors this late in the project, you're really behind the curve. The purpose of large donors is to get in early and help build a small donor network. That's what we did with the Cruz campaign in 2016, and it sustains you. If you have a bad day, large donors zip up the pockets, don't want to take the phone calls, renege on the pledges. It's extremely difficult. I can imagine it's absolute hell over at Biden today trying to get people to write those checks. So candidates who rely on large checks like Buttigieg and Biden are weaker at this point. Candidates like Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump, who have extensive small donor networks, are extremely resilient. What we're seeing this time that's a little different is a self-funded candidate with seemingly limitless resources. So what's shaping up is like a 2-candidate title bout. They're both capable of going 15 rounds, but the problem that's emerging is there's a schism in the Democratic Party on ideas. Yes, they're unified around removing Donald Trump, but beyond that, there's no consensus. You have a communist and you have a capitalist billionaire. There's not a lot of overlap there, and there's not enough to actually win, build a coalition. Both fighters are going to be standing at the end of 15 rounds, but it's a split decision, likely in Milwaukee, and really hard to put it together.
You never know. Someone could attract the capital and interest if he or she performs well in some upcoming contest, and maybe the money sort of is shaken loose, but way too early to define how that's going to go. Thank you very much, Dan. Good seeing you.
Thank you.